Hello everyone, my name is Elisande, and today I'm doing a gameplay demo for a Darkest Dungeon mod that I created, which adds the Candlemaker class. So the Candlemaker may look like an occultist because I haven't added custom art assets yet, but I can assure you it's a very different class and a very different playstyle. The first thing you need to know about the Candlemaker is that they're all about playing with light. So every ability they have will move your light either up or down by varying amounts. We'll take a look at those abilities in just a minute to show you why. The reason that happens is each ability, in addition to changing your light level, will also provide a buff at a specific light level. So the way that it works is an ability that increases your light or raises your torch level will give you a buff that makes you do more damage when your light is lower, and the opposite is when an ability decreases your light, then it gives you a healing buff when your light is above half. So that's the way to. So like whichever way the Candlemaker is pushing the light, you get a buff for the opposite. So this encourages you to do things like use his light abilities and his darkness abilities, if you want to call them that, to like push the light level around so you can take advantage of the buffs that you have, or manually interact with your torch during combat in order to maximize for those buffs. Okay, so you'll notice when we're going through that most of her abilities are not very strong on their own, and this is intentional. So in order for her to be really good, you really have to pay attention to what buffs you're applying, and keeping yourself in a light level for the buffs that you want for what's going on. So very technical character, so if you're like into more like just beat stuff up, might not be a class for you. Okay, so let's jump in here real quick. We'll look at some of the abilities, and then about 2 steps in front of me we should hit a battle. And for this battle we're going to use 4 abilities. The first one is called Snuff. So Snuff is a single target defensive buff. It will stealth the hero for 2 rounds, as you can see. It gives them a small dodge buff, and it will also clear their mark if they're marked. So this is basically kind of like a guard, right? So stealth makes it so that your units cannot be directly targeted by attacks, although they can still be hit by area of effect attacks. So it does provide a large level of protection for them. And you'll see that it lowers torch by 75. So if you're not familiar with how the light system works, or haven't paid a lot of attention to it before, your light at maximum is 100 and at minimum is 0. So 75 reduction is huge. It's 3/4 of your entire light. So anything except almost completely maximum torch, this is going to take you down all the way to pitch black. So while this protects your unit, it also adds risk for your other units, because at low torch light, the enemies do more damage and they have a higher chance to crit. But that risk is also balanced out because it also provides a party-wide buff, as you can see the last thing on the tooltip here, plus 50% healing received if torch is above 49. So if you use Snuff to drop your torch by a large amount, and then just use some torches to bring your torch light back up above 49, now you've got a 50% healing received buff. So that means that any other healing classes that you have are going to be 50% more effective, and also anybody who has self-heals, right? So your Houndmasters or Lepers, those sorts of things. Okay, so that's Snuff. The second one is Strike Match. So Strike Match is his main healing ability, and he is, well, sorry, she. I keep seeing the occultist model and thinking it, but Candlemaker will be a female with the art assets. So Strike Match is the main line healing ability for the Candlemaker, and it does almost no upfront healing. At the lower ranks, it'll do 0 healing. You can see here we're at rank 3 right now. It'll do 0 to 1, and at the highest rank, it will do exactly 1 point of healing, basically to help bring you off death's door. And other than that, the upfront heal is basically pointless. But what isn't pointless is that you have this heal over time. So the heal over time, relatively small, 2 points a round for 3 rounds, so 6 total. If you look at, say, Vestal's single target heal is both a larger heal and does all the healing at once, right? So this might feel a little weak, but I'll talk about why how you can optimize that in just a second. It also raises your torch by 25, so this is a quarter of your torch. It will go up, and because it's a torch raising ability, that means that it's going to increase your damage when your torch is below 51, in this case by 20%. Okay, so why is 2 points of a heal per round for 3 rounds something to be excited about? Well, there's 2 parts about this. First of all is it stacks. So very similar to what you can do with Arbalest, where as you heal, her heals become more effective. If you really know that a unit is going to be taking like lots of consistent damage, you can keep stacking strike match on them and build them up to a high heal over time. But the other thing that's really important is if we look back at Snuff for a second, you notice that the high light buffs above 49 increase your healing received. So this means if you have a heal over time on your units, this party-wide buff that increases your healing is actually going to make the heal over times that are already on them much more effective. So whereas you can see like 2 points a round for 3 rounds, not that interesting. But if you have, let's say, 100% increase, now you're looking at 4 points a round for 3 rounds, that's 12 health. That's a really good heal for one spell that you cast. And in addition to that, when you cast the spell, you're also increasing your torch, right, to help provide some safety to your party. And also, you're stacking up that plus damage buff when your torch is below 51. So that's Strike Match. This you'll be using a lot if you're playing Candlemaker, one of the core abilities. Alright, the next one is called Mere Trickery. So Mere Trickery is a way to manage stress if you want to try and use Candlemaker for that. The Candlemaker has no way to cure stress at all, not even little ones. Arbalest, Houndmaster, Jester, right? They all have like good stress management things. Candlemaker can't be used for that, but he can help, or she can help you protect one unit from stress using this Mere Trickery. So the first thing that it does is it cures horror. So a really useful place is when you're fighting the Slavering Ghoul, which likes to howl and inflict horror on all of your guys. Another one is in the Shieldbreaker Nightmare. The Shieldbreaker gets a significant horror put on him, and you can use this to cure that. It also reduces stress taken by 70% for a couple of rounds. So it continues to like keep that stress down, which is nice. And increases accuracy slightly. The last one is really about dealing with stealth. So the Candlemaker does not have any way to remove stealth, but they can, with Mere Trickery, give one unit the ability to ignore stealth. So this is both good and bad. So if you think about most de-stealth abilities, since they remove the stealth, it opens up the enemy to being attacked by any member of your party. So you can quickly rush one down. Mere Trickery, on the other hand, you use it on a single unit, and that single unit now is allowed to attack things without stealth. And also gets 50% damage increase versus stealth. So if you have a unit that you already know is going to be the unit that's taking down the stealthed enemy, this is incredibly helpful because you can buff them with this and then get an extra damage in. The downside is if you use Mere Trickery because you're going to set up to take down a stealth unit, and then that unit just gets beat up, right? Or for whatever reason you need to do something other than attacking the stealth creature, the rest of your party is still locked out of it. So it's kind of a benefit, well, also a downside. Mere Trickery is a light increasing. As you can see, it increases torch by 25, which also means that it's going to give the party a buff at the light levels, same as all of these. Okay, so last one, Eerie Wax. So Eerie Wax is one of only 2 attacks that the Candlemaker has, and this is a gamble ability. So the reason I say it's a gamble ability is it does medium-ish damage, and if you're just sitting in the back rank and you have nothing else to cast because your party is relatively well healed and you don't want to do any buffs, Eerie Wax is a great workhorse, just do some middling damage. But the amount of damage it does is not going to change your worm, unless the target is bleeding or blighted. So in that case, you can see that there are huge damage and crit increases versus bleeding and blighted. 140% at rank 3 scales all the way up to 180% at rank 4, or at rank 5, and starts at about 100%. So this is huge. This means it's going to hit, and it's going to hit hard. But there's a big downside. So here you can see it says transfer bleed and transfer blight. So if you hit a bleeding or blighted target, it's going to do a tremendous amount of damage, and if they're both bleeding and blighted, both of these buffs will apply. So that would be 280% increased damage and 18% crit for rank 3 here. But once you hit them, whatever bleeds and blights are on that unit do get transferred to the Candlemaker. So now you have to be able to deal with those. So bandages, anti-venom, or having a Plague Doctor on your team, really beneficial if you're planning to use Eerie Wax to its maximum. Another thing is if you eliminate the unit, if you crit them, and so they leave no corpse with that hit, you will not get the bleeds and the blights because there's nothing left to steal. They just get wiped out of existence. Okay, so these are the abilities that we're going to use in this first round. Mere Trickery is not going to be incredibly useful. This is an apprentice dungeon, so there won't be any stealth. But we can still use it for the accuracy buff and reducing stress. And looking at it now, I think that accuracy buff needs to get tuned down a little bit, so I'll probably do that in the next release. But let's see how this plays. Oh, my party got surprised and I actually forgot to move it back, so let's do some moving here. Alright, so here we go. We've got some abilities here that we can use. I think maybe Mere Trickery, which is just our Cures Horror, adds stress reduction, would be a good thing to use. It's not particularly useful here, but just to kind of show what it is and what it can do. And if we watch our torch up here, so right now we have 77 torch. Let's go ahead and use Mere Trickery. And since it's an accuracy buff, let's go ahead and use it on our Man-at-Arms.
The light, the promise of safety.
Alright, we'll wait for the attack turn to go through, and then I'll explain kind of what this is.
Diminished.
Okay, so now you see our light is at 100, so we rose it by 25%, that's a large amount, and that brought us all the way up to 100. And if we look at our buffs now, oh, he has a lot of buffs. Let's try somebody who has this. Okay, so you can see this applied a party-wide buff to us when we use Mere Trickery that increases damage by 20% when torch is below 51 for 2 rounds. So at this point, it's probably not incredibly useful for us to cut our light in order to take advantage of that, especially not for Antiquarian, because Antiquarian doesn't do a lot of damage anyways. But that is an option that we have. Now what I do think we're going to do here is use Invigorating Vapors to get some dodge. We're going to be taking this this round kind of slow because I'm showing off abilities, so I want to make sure my team is going to be protected. Alright, let's get Retribution up here. Okay, let's just eliminate one of these guys.
Eradicated.
Alright, so next up, Strike Match. This is our workhorse heal. Increases light by 25 and also gives us a damage bonus when we're below 51%. So my plan here, what I'm setting up for is I'm going to try and blight somebody with my Antiquarian this turn in order to get blight on them. And then I'm going to use Eerie Wax. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use Strike Match to bring up the torch and give us another stack of damage below 51 torch. And then when it becomes my Antiquarian's turn, I'm going to drop the light to take advantage of that buff, and then I'm just going to nuke somebody out of existence with Eerie Wax. That's the plan. So we'll see if the plan works. So let's see who's... let's see, he's missing 11, 9, 4. Alright, so let's heal our Man-at-Arms. So you can see our light's still at 100, but now we have...
Annihilated.
Another stack, so 40% damage at torch below 51. So now, at low torchlight, we're pretty nasty. Alright, so let's try and get this guy lighted up so that we can... There we go. Okay, so now Eerie Wax is going to be huge this turn. Let's just stall with this guy. Let's get a Protect up. Antiquarian.
A brilliant confluence of skill and purpose.
Okay, we're going to stall again. Let's Protect the Antiquarian again. I hope he's not going to die. Is he going to die? No, he'll survive. Okay. So let's chop this dude.
Obliterated.
Okay, so now it's time to take advantage of... Oh, because the Candlemaker gets slightly less from his buffs than the rest of the party does, because the buffs wear off on his turn. So it's only going to be a 20% damage increase, but I think we're still going to do a lot of damage, so let's see. So we'll drop our light here. The buff says if torch below 51, we're currently at 50, so we should be getting 20% damage increase. And Eerie Wax, 140% damage to Blighted and 9% crit. So let's see, 8 to 14, let's see what we do.
Decimated.
There we go. And you can see because...
this expedition at least
because
promises
it was his
success.
last turn of Blight, the Blight didn't show up on his corpse, and so it didn't end up transferring to the Antiquarian, or the Candlemaker. So that actually was a lot of benefit there. Alright, get our torch back up.
The way is lit. The path is clear.
We're gonna switch out for some
We
different
require
abilities here.
only the
We're gonna
strength to
use,
follow it.
Boogeymen, Embers, and Blazing Star. So let's talk about these abilities real fast. So Embers is the Candlemaker's other mainline attack. It hits all 4 units, and with a decent accuracy chance, and it debuffs everything it hits for 30%. So now the benefit here, even though this does very low damage to each unit, any unit that gets hit by it is going to get attempt to debuff for 30% damage taken. So as you've noticed with the low light buff that increases your damage, there's lots of ways here if you're playing off these synergies to really like ramp up the damage that something takes. So just to recap, hits all the units, damage taken debuff hits them, and the last part you'll see it says 25% healing received at torch above 49. This is the standard healing increase buff, but 60% base. So what's different is every target that you hit has a 60% chance to apply the 25% healing buff, and it stacks. So this means, in the best case scenario where you hit all 4 units with Embers, you will get plus 100% healing received above 49 torch. So this could be a huge workhorse in order to quickly get up that healing buff in order to make yourself more effective. But the fewer targets there are, the less effective this is going to be, right? So for things like Strike Match, for instance, that always give you, or not Strike Match, like Eerie Wax, that have 100% chance to give you the healing buff. If you've only got 1 or 2 units and you need to get a healing buff up, this can be a better use than using Embers, for instance. Okay, the second new ability is called Blazing Star. So this is the Candlemaker's like, oh my god, huge heal thing. So it's very cool. It can completely turn a fight around, but it has a lot of downsides to it. So what it does is it does a midline single target heal This is somewhat close to what you would get from the Vessel single target heal. It's less powerful at the same levels, and it increases the torch by 75%. So this is the opposite of Snuff. So Snuff is minus 75%, Blaze is plus 75 torch. So that's 3/4 of your torch. So even at pitch black, you're going to jump all the way up to 3/4 torch. So this is a huge torch increase. And it applies a heal over time to the entire party for 3 points a round for 2 rounds. So this will obviously stack with Strike Match if they have stacks of Strike Match already on them. So very powerful. However, there's downside too. So using Blazing Star will completely lock the Candlemaker out of being able to cast any healing abilities for 2 turns. So this means Blazing Star and Strike Match are both completely locked out for 2 turns. So when you use this ability, you need to be very sure that you're going to be able to survive for the next 2 rounds without having any heals from your Candlemaker. Now, you can offset that because you do have all of your abilities that decrease torch, like, let's see, Snuff for instance, increases healing received by 50%, right? You can still use Snuff while your healing abilities are locked out, and that will increase the healing received from those heal over times that are already on your units. But Snuff decreases your torch by 75%, which means that if you want to take advantage of that, once you use Snuff, you're going to have to manually manage your light by consuming torches to bring it back up. So if you have a lot of torches, maybe that's something that you can easily do. If you don't have a lot of torches on you, not. And then the last part about Blazing Star is that it increases damage by 50% when you're below 51 torch. So this is twice as much as a regular ability. So if we look at Strike Match, which is also a torch increaser, you get 20% damage below 51. Blazing Star is 40%. So this allows you to stack up damage very quickly and rewards you for, once you've used Blazing Star, to immediately then transfer into like a damage dealing round. And the very last ability is called Boogeyman. So Boogeyman applies a small horror to the friendly unit that you use on. It's a friendly buff. It reduces torch by 25%, and it gives that unit a 90% damage buff for the next turn. So if you've used a Grave Robber before and you're familiar with how Shadow Fade works, it's very similar. Shadow Fade will stealth you for 1 turn and then gives the Grave Robber a huge damage buff on the next turn and the next turn only. This is very similar. It's meant to set up gigantic attacks, right? So if you have somebody who's about to hit really hard, you have a Houndmaster that's using dog biscuits and the target is marked, or you have a Bounty Hunter against a marked target, or you have the Grave Robber who is already Shadow Faded and has the Shadow Fade buff. This can set up just massive attacks, super useful for bosses. But there's 2 downsides. The first is it does apply a horror, so it's 3 stress per round for 3 rounds. It's 9 total stress, so that's 1 whole block of stress, basically. And it says pull because of the way that the game thinks about it, but it will attempt to push that unit 1 forward. So if your unit already has, this can be resisted. So if your unit has high move resist, this won't be a big deal. If they don't, expect that they're going to get pushed forward. But then you have a 90% damage increase, right? You can just do massive amounts with this. And then you can see, since it is a torch decreasing ability, you do get the 25% healing received if torch above 49. Okay, so we're about to walk into another battle. I'm going to arrange my party correctly this time. And then we can check out these abilities that we just added. So the new ones are Boogeyman, Embers, and Blazing Star. Okay, so now this is a where I actually wish that I still had Snuff, because Snuff, in addition to stealthing, clears marks. If you haven't seen these units before, the fungal artillery here will attempt to mark our targets, and if they get marked, then this fungal scratcher will use Rend the Mark to do a large amount of damage to my units. So that's not optimal. So what we're going to try and do here is we're going to try and set up a big damage turn against this fungal scratcher. And we're going to do that by marking him and then using boogeymen to increase his damage by a significant amount next turn. So let's try that. Alright. So let's boogeymen on our bounty hunter here in order to give him a 90% damage buff for next turn. And he resisted the push forward, which is nice.
Even the boldest gaze.
So here you can see that he has 90% increased damage and also a 50% increased healing buff, which is nice. Okay, so what do we want to do with our Antiquarian? I think, let's see, our torch is above, so we're getting 50% extra healing. So let's use her heal. Okay, and I would really like... Let's see, I definitely don't want to mark myself here. Maybe we just crush. Crush feels good. Okay, there's the mark I was talking about. So now we can expect a large amount of damage heading towards our man-at-arms. There it is, run the mark, and he dodged. Very nice. Okay, so this is our turn. We've got the 90% damage increase. We're going to use Collect Bounty, which is another 90% versus marked. And this guy has a mark on him. So we're expecting a large amount of damage here, 21 to 46. His minimum is more life than this guy has total.
As the fiend falls, a faint
so that's an
hope
example
blossoms.
of how using boogeymen, you can set up these big turns. And that's really what the Candlemaker is all about, is setting up big turns. She isn't usually the person who does the big turn themselves. Instead, they're supporting the rest of the units. Alright, let's stun this guy.
Impressive.
We're not worried about this mark anymore because the fungal scratcher is down. Disease, that's not optimal. That's fine. Okay, so next let's use Embers. So this is the other ability we're talking about. Does low amount of damage, hits all units, but it has a chance to apply a 30% damage taken debuff to the enemies. And each unit that it hits has a chance to give us a stack of this plus 25% healing. So let's give it a shot. Alright, we hit all four. So now if we take a look at this, we can see plus 125% when torch is above 49. So in this case, I definitely want to heal with my Antiquarian because I don't want this blight getting the better of her. But my torch is too low to get advantage of that buff. So what I'm going to do is just manually increase it. Alright, heal yourself. There we go, 4-point heal. That's huge for Antiquarians. And unfortunately, she just got even more blight. But that's alright. Alright, let's finish him. Just get this thing down.
Their formation is broken. Maintain the offensive.
Okay, and so the last ability that I want to show you is Blazing Star. Blazing Star, big heal, does a single target heal to the unit, and then does a group heal over time for 2 rounds. So this is like gigantic when it lands. It can turn a fight around. And right now we have our torch above 69, so we're actually going to get 125% healing increased from this giant heal that we're about to land. So this is going to be huge.
Vigor is restored.
Oh, and it crit. Wow, look at that. Okay, so you can see each of our guys has 3 hit points per round. Unfortunately, her blight is actually stronger than the heal that she's getting, but she can heal herself too. That's not too bad.
A time to perform beyond one's limits.
And now we're going to kind of clean these units up. And I'm going to do that by getting this corpse to bring the other one forward. Alright, let's get rid of this other corpse. Actually, let's just get rid of this guy.
Continue the onslaught. Destroy them
Alright,
all.
still going to take advantage of this 100% healing increase to heal himself again. But because we use Blazing Star, we also have plus 40% damage if Torch is below 51. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to cut Torch, and we are going to do a boatload of damage to this thing.
Press this advantage. Give them no quarter.
There you go. This is also beneficial because my Torch was low. We had plus loot, so we actually got extra loot for the monsters as well. I don't want any of this stuff. Okay, so that was the basic walkthrough of Candlemaker. I hope you enjoyed the video. I also hope you'll enjoy the mod. The mod should be available, I think, sometime next week. I'll make it publicly available. Right now, it's only available on Steam to people who have me friended on Steam, but you should be able to see more of this pretty soon. Alright, thanks. Bye.